called by request of the supervisor of the town of Southampton in order to consider a special agenda item, namely a review of the property at 17 Old Country Road in Watermill. And before we get to that, let me just indicate that we received the application on the afternoon of April 21st. The request to review it because of some time considerations associated with the interest of the town of Southampton in the property was that it should be reviewed as quickly as possible. There was some suggestion in the communications I received that perhaps it had been received a long time ago. The property had an application made to the Conservation Board back in January, and the Conservation Board issued its report, I believe, March 3rd or the beginning of March. So that application has been somewhat in process, but it did not get to us until basically 12 days ago. And we have had a lot of diligent work being done with respect to this. 4 of the Landmarks Board members went to the property to review and inspect the site. That was Susan Clark, and thank you, Susan, for setting up the arrangement with Bob Burden. That was extremely helpful. And besides Susan, Martha Green and Vicky Kahn and myself were there as well, and that was, I believe, last Monday. I forget the April date that it is, but so with that, are there any questions about the background to all of this occasion for this meeting?
And Julie was also there.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that you were there.
And yes. It was Monday, April 25th.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for it. So, Susan, you have been working on the project and property. Do you want to run through the run through your report? You uploaded a report earlier, and
preferable would be is the one that I uploaded today, but if you're unable to get that, then
well, I think I have it here. Okay, now let me see if I can get this shared. Share screen, and
okay, that is the other one. That's not the one that I uploaded today, but that's...
okay. Let me see if you might have
because it says up on the it's highlighted in yellow. The reason being is I just received some information this morning from Ed, actually some vintage photographs that he received from descendants of the former caretaker from the 1920s, plus some other pertinent real estate transaction. It actually changed the whole report that I spent the weekend working on. Well, it was more than the weekend, but particularly the entire weekend. So basically, and I can start as Ed is looking for that. This particular house has always been referred to as the Ball caretaker's house. And there's a vintage photo that was in my report taken by Fred Benedict. There it is. That's the new one over at the mill. I mean, he was one of the Benedicts that had the mill. Uncle Fred had a little workshop out back. was a photographer, and he did take some pictures of houses. And I believe in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And this one, Arthur S. Muller donated it to the Watermill Museum. And it was, it's on page 3, I believe, right there it is. And that one, it's, a collector's item because it's labeled the caretaker's house at the museum for the Thomas Earl Ball estate. And Arthur S. Muller was the local postmaster, I believe. And Bob probably knows this also, so he could correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, Fred took that, and that's the picture we had. And of course, it's a lovely house, and it looks almost the same, except the windmill isn't there anymore. But the difference is we had a 1916 map that said it belonged to a Samuel McConnell. And so that there was an implication. So that one we can go to that. Go back. You got to go back to 1902. It should still be in there. So in 1902, there's always been a discrepancy. 1930. There, one more up from that. That's 16. Go right. There it is. So this is. Oh, excuse me, that's the 1916 map, my mistake. The 1902 map had it, had the property as vacant belonging to Estelle Starr Best, whose family had the property at 15 Little Cobb. And so apparently it looked like it had gone to her son-in-law, Samuel McConnell. He had married Bertha Best. So for then, some people thought Samuel McConnell was the caretaker, but we knew that he's a linen importer, and he was quite wealthy, and along with the rest of the McConnell family. So I did do a history on Samuel and his wife Bertha and their children. However, Ed found an article, if you back up to, I think, around 1902, Ed, that actually after Albert acquired the property, there it is. His son Leonard, who is not as well known as the rest of the family, was the trustee, and he sold it to Ansel H. Ball. And of course, it says the North Side Main Road lot. And I had found that described as that earlier when the Osbornes and the Jaggers sold to Albert Best in 1900. So shortly before he died. So that changed the whole thing. It's no longer the Best family. It goes to the Ansel H. Ball family. And he is the son of Thomas R. Ball, who developed the whole Ball estate area. Of course, I included, there's a long detailed PDF that I sent earlier with a report from that whole entire area. So Ansel H. is now, of course, the owner of that 1902 property. And from what the information that Ed received today is Ansel built that house for his longtime caretaker, John Osborne. And John is also mentioned in Ansel's will as receiving $80 a month for his life because I guess Ansel, he took good care of Ansel's property and he had befriended him. So this is indeed not a Best guest house or Best property. It's the Ansel H. Ball caretaker's house. And part of Ansel H. is he had the property at 326 Cobb Road. And that's the large one. A number of people visited that a few years ago. Pictures aren't included in this report, but they're in the other one. It's the one with the large Watermill in front. That's been recently, the whole property's recently been rejoined and restored. So it's a very significant property on Mecox Bay. And this property was often referred to on the cottage lists and in newspaper articles as Top Notch or Top Notch Farms. And Ansel had kennels. He raised show dogs until around 1910. He also had ducks he donated it apparently to the at some point when he got rid of them, right around 1910, to Central Park. He had mallard and black ducks, and also chickens. And there were a number of articles, which are not included yet, about the different the animals that he raised. But around 1910, he dismantled his kennels, gave the dogs away, and along with the ducks. So if you go down a little bit farther, this is the article that Ed found. And I believe that's 1911 article. Obviously, he still has a few chickens left then. And if you look at the bottom one with the large chicken, that appears to be, and Ed, I assume you saw that, that appears to be the caretaker's house in the back left corner. That is not Ansel's house. So my guess is it would have really made a lot of sense if you had a large estate. You really wouldn't have want the poultry along with the associated odors close to your house. You probably over there on the water with a caretaker. So this is that is the historic significance. And if you go back to the beginning pictures, and there's more with Ansel. There's a whole long history I said of that family. It's pretty fascinating. They were actually also Ansel's father helped co-found the Beston Company. So there was a business relationship there. But if you go back up to the beginning, there are the pictures architecturally. Okay, go to page 1. And okay, keep going. One more. So some of the things were difficult to see from the road and even in some of the pictures, but there's some really unusual and unique features to this house, things that I haven't seen other places. And the one thing is, of course, the two front dormers with that conical turret style roof. And if you go to the picture below it, they had a double set of them with 3 windows. I think that's the bathroom in the center and the 2 bedrooms. Those are something that are really unique. I haven't seen those on any of the other properties. On the right, when you see looking to the northwest, you can see on the top, it's almost like a recessed bay type window. The center window has the top pane is diamonds, and it's flanked by, there's 2 other smaller windows with diamond panes at the top. And then farther on the left and the right, they're bullseye. You'll see pictures later, bullseye windows. Have not seen those anywhere before. In fact, Julie and I were looking at those together, and I thought, well, those must be bullseye windows, is my guess. They would be called that. And I found some reference to some that are actually made artistically called that. And the top window in that gable's also diamond. If you look on that same picture down below to the right, there's a shallow bay. Yeah, right there it says looking northwest. There's a shallow bay up one. This
here.
Shallow bay with 6/1 windows. It almost doesn't stand out unless you see the interior pictures. But I mean, that's not the most unique picture, but it's just they're different. And I didn't mention that actually that gable on each side overhangs on both of the houses, on both sides of the house. If you look at the bottom left picture, the rear of the house, you can see that there is definitely a later shed roof addition. And Bob can correct me on this. That's the one that goes down to the base, now goes down to the basement door, I believe. And from what I could tell, the one with the gable had an original door with those rosettes or bullseye plinth board. So it may have been original to the house, but the shed one has definitely been added just so they could go down, people could go down in the basement without going outside. But if you look on that south, go to the right and look, oh, that door is a newer one, appeared to be newer right there on the rears. If you go to the southeast section and looking southeast, excuse me, This is the one side that had a number of newer features. You can see, of course, the shed roof addition to the left, the bay window to the right of the door to the kitchen. And I hadn't noticed, but Ed did up in the gable. There's no longer a diamond shaped window. And if you look on the right, it appears to be the original porch that you see in the vintage pictures with the square pillars, and the railings appear to be original unless they were placed in kind. But there's some very unique features. If you go down to the next one, you'll see some of the interior. Ed did a separate PDF. And the one thing I needed to correct in mine, and then thanks to Bob, I had a picture of the decorative chair railing. And Bob said, actually, the family added that above, and they had done the B-board in the kitchen. So I took that one off, the one I said earlier. And instead, I put the one with the pink, with the door frames, with the rosette bullseye plinth boards, because those appeared, I've never seen that type of a trim above the chair rail before, but I believe Bob, of course, knows that his family had put that in. But if you look here, you can see the top left one. You see again the pillar or the post on the front porch, the square. You see the original front door. See going to the right, the newel post at the bottom and the top, and also a shot going down. And on the left is where there's another diamond window on that staircase. On the row below it, you can see the 6/1 windows in that bay window on the east. And I included the one in the middle that was actually the unpainted varnished version of the 6/1 basement. I mean, a window going to the basement, which I assume all the originals probably looked at that like that at one time, unpainted. And they had a door of the same, the dark stain. A lot of original door frames and doors. That bullseye window, the set of those are just, to me, they're priceless. I haven't seen those before. And the diamond shaped windows. And on the right, there were also 6/2 windows. So there's really a variety of architectural features. It is listed in the 20, if you go back up, the 2014, I think it's page 3 or wherever you were. That page 3 was the 2014 Southampton Historic Resources Survey. It's Watermill, Ashley Historic District 1. It was the first one. And that study also notes that it was listed on the state and national register. It's in their database as being eligible for the state and national register. And their maps aren't up and running now, so I wasn't able to actually corroborate that.
I could not find that either in checking.
Thank you. I believe that to be true because they had researched that when that information was available. And I used to be able to access it, but of course, no longer. But locally, I said it was always referred to as a Ball estate caretaker's house, and the Watermill Museum and Arthur Muller. They were correct. So, and it was part of the Top Notch Farm. So, if you go to page 4. You can see that's the lay. Go up to the top of that one, the lay of the property, the site plan, right there, overhead. On the top part of the property is 15 Old Country Road. It's 1.67 acres. And that has a house on it that the AYB is 1980. And it's also proposed for demolition, but it's not part of our application because of the age, it wasn't built in before 1940 or before, but that one would be demolished because it's part of this. The arrow, of course, is painting to the Ball Caretaker's estate, and I've tried to scrub all the things that also call it the Samuel McConnell Cottage, but that's on 4.28 acres. And then over to the right appears to be a former accessory structure or cottage. The AYB from the town is 1966, but it's actually the circa 1900s. As per the application, the family had mentioned that it's proposed for demolition, but it has been altered, and there doesn't appear to be little to no historic significance or, fabric or materials left. If you go down right below it, that shows that there are a number of additions to that. It's actually, you can see it's sort of wanders around. We've got an S and an L, and Julie and I were in that together. There was some, if you look at the bottom, there was some beadboard that appeared to be possibly original. Maybe this was, of course, if this was part of the chicken coops, but there seemed to be a lot of course, agricultural type buildings between the ducks, the chickens, and the dogs on this side. But you can see the ceiling and that, and the wall. But because of the amount of alteration to it, the additions to it, and just a small amount of remaining fabric, which most of it's been covered in newer materials because people were living here. It was used by the family, that I saw no reason to object, even if it was built in the 1900s, to that, because of the renovations and alterations. And unless somebody else feels differently, I wasn't good. The rest of the report would just be based on the main bulk estate caretaker's cottage, because this one I didn't feel had any significance. Are you agreeable to people agreeable to that, Ed, etc.?
I have no interest in the minor building that you're talking about.
Right, so that's it. I'm not going to include any more information or try to figure out if that really had been part of, had been a chicken barn for them. I don't think it, that's not relevant because there's really no material left anyway. So going
Susan?
down, yeah.
Susan, hi, it's Julie. I looked on some aerials and I couldn't find that building because when we were inside it, I thought maybe it had some historical significance, but I didn't see it on the 1930 aerial. Did you?
It's one of those things that you have to blow them up, and it's hard. There may be something over there to the right. Yes, there could be right over there, right in that area, but I can't tell you 100%.
Yeah, I couldn't quite.
Somehow they show up better on the computer, because there was one last month until I blew it up and it ended up on the computer PDF. I didn't see it. Go down to the 1938 right below it though.
Can you
then
see
that
it
one's
there?
even, you can see there is something appears to be there. So,
Right. Okay.
but
I guess
so
it was.
to me, is if I mention it as part of this report, which I did, and we agree there's no historical significance, if it's found to be circa pre-1940, we have actually reviewed it and found it.
Right. I think what I was doing was going through and then I looked at 1962 and there was nothing there. So I don't know if it maybe was built, something was
Okay,
built.
and I didn't
on
go
the original-
right, didn't go
Yeah.
past. So, and you could be right, it could have been totally replaced. That's always a possibility, but since I didn't research that one because of the lack of whatever is what fabric was remaining of that. So if I had to, pick and choose between the two, obviously, the estate caretaker.
The main house is.
That would be the one that we would be most interested in. I'll be adding some more of the Ansel Ball information. But that particular area, I included some information, some background of 1958. 1858, there's nothing there. You really can't tell who owned it, but there are also Fosters, Halsey, and Burnett's owned a lot of property. And I did find some deeds from, actually they had her as Rowena Randall, and I thought she's got to be from Brookhaven, and her husband George, I thought she's got to be related to somebody. And when I Googled her or put her in Long Island genealogy, she's a Burnett, so it made sense. So that property appears to have been in the Burnett family for a number of years, because she also sold a property to Mrs. Topping, who has a house on the either the 1870, oh, excuse me, on the 1894 map. So she was selling properties in that particular area. But around 1988, she sold some properties to Charles and Anna Jagger, and that, not sure how the Osbornes are related to the Jaggers, but in 1897, that particular Lieber was predated the ones that got transferred to Albert Best. And so they all describe property on the north side of the highway to Watermill and on the south side of Mill Creek. So I believe that to be correct. The one had the 1 acre for $10. The other one never did. I could not find the acreage in it, even though I read it 2 or 3 times. But by 1900, between the newspaper articles and the deeds, the property was owned by Albert Best. Went in, he died in that year. It would have gone to his wife, Estelle Starbest, 1902 map and some other articles. And by 1902, the article that Ed sent me has it going to Ansel H. Ball. There's a gap there, and I'm not sure exactly what year it went to E.H. Wheeler. I could not find any E.H. Wheeler in the vicinity, except in this article. But the cottage list mentioned that the Wheeler house was rented to a John D. Powers in 37 and 38. And then using that name, and it would be the Burden's grandfather, Robert J. Kelly, and he has an affidavit that he filed at some point for a 1985 CO saying he bought them in 43. And there were also newspaper articles saying that he bought the property 5 acres for $8,000 in 1943. Another one said 7,500. And also that he had I think it was a $3,500 mortgage from E.H. Wheeler. So from 1943 on, it had remained in the Kelly Burden family. And according to, and Bob's there and can fill me in if I'm wrong, according to Marilyn's obituary, the family moved there full time in 1971. And of course, they've resided there ever since then. So she was active in the Watermill Museum. She helped construct the first quilt, that they had a quilt raffle around 1976. And after that, they started the annual Watermill Quilt Show that so many people, including myself, go to and enjoy. And she chaired that for a number of years, and it continues to this day. And she'd been president of the Watermill Museum, and also was president of the Watermill, I think it was the VIA, the Women's Auxiliary, and organized fundraisers. So the family moved here, and they were, of course, active members of the Watermill community since 1943. So we have a house that has entrance, of course, architectural features. And Ed, if you go to page 10 on your vintage pictures back at that same, we didn't look at the Greta Olson.
Let me try to bring that up in a different way here.
In any way you want to bring that up, Ed.
Okay. Let me see if I can get this shared here.
It was in that same one right after. And there's the one from what Ed said. This, of course, this had the cars. I'm assuming this may be John Osborne and John Osborne's wife, but it may be at the time Louise Marie when her in-laws visited. So
there is the possibility that a sister-in-law named Sigrid Olsen lived in the house with John Osborne and his wife Marie Louise. So
Okay.
this might be her rather than John Osborne's wife.
Okay, and you can fill me in. You can,
Yeah.
if you want to fill in the details, but you can see architecturally, it's the same house. But you also see a house, of course, off to the left there in the back, in the rear. It's no longer.
It
there.
may be a house. It may be a farm building.
Could be. It has a chimney and an extension in back, but it
Right.
could be.
Yeah.
Very well could be. But
One thing to notice is the south wall being covered with vines, kind of perhaps the air conditioning of the time, having a cool wall rather than having one in the summer heat. Notice here that there is no driveway extending past the front porch. There is also no walkway up onto the front porch, which I found a little bit odd along the way. Let me just go to the next picture. This is
now that extends to
apparently,
the front now.
pardon?
I say that the driveway extends in the front and there's
Right.
a walkway. So it's
Now
a
there is a driveway and there is a walkway.
Yeah.
On the back of this picture in Swedish is a note saying, in the corner, you will see the motor lodge. And it's referring to this, where the horse and wagon is. The relatives that Marie Louise, the John Osborne's wife, was born in Sweden. This is her sister Greta, who I think may have been a teacher in Brooklyn visiting, apparently. So that side of the family was Swedish, and Osborne is not related to the East Hampton Osbornes, nor to the Southampton Osbornes of old. Osborne was an immigrant from Ireland or Scotland, and I don't know how long they were married, but both of them, Osborne and his wife, were immigrant to the area at the time of the 1910-1915 period of time that's associated with the development of this house.
Ed,
Yes.
just a quick question. There seems to be like a house name over the front porch entrance.
Oh,
Is that
yes.
legible to you?
It is. Maybe it's legible to you, but
I can't see it.
I deciphered it.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's top notch.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic.
You can just
That makes
barely
that
see
clear.
the CHNOTCH and
Yep. Top.
T and P. So
Thank you.
yes, a little adventure and detective work. I actually did a high resolution scan for this picture in order to be able to capture the license plates, because sometimes you will find information relative to this early period of automotive travel of auto registrations listed in newspapers. And so the original photographs were very difficult to get, but these clearly give the license plate number 261-245. So
Right.
in somebody's spare time, maybe some pursuit of who the cars belong to might be made.
What year is the car, Ed? Do you know?
I do not know, but
I looked because of the McConnell one. I looked up, of course, the Model A's and the Model T's, but I have a hard time telling the difference.
yeah, I would almost say before 1920, but I couldn't vouch for that without more investigation, more research. So notice, by the way, on this, both this and the other photograph, there is a windmill on the property, which was shown on the map of the McConnell 1916 real estate map image there.
And also the porch pillars, of course, look the same. That's what I found.
Right.
Square.
Yeah. This one more picture, family. Oh, this is top notch, and this is the Swedish. In the corner is the motor lodge. I guess an early term for a garage for some people.
Okay.
And this is the sister-in-law and brother-in-law of John Osborne, Greta and Eric Olson, visiting at some point. An absence of some of the greenery along the side of the house gives another time period when this event certainly took place. What else do I have to indicate here? Just a little bit.
That 1938 map and the other thing, and I'll just say you don't need to pull them back up, but Ed had, and I hadn't seen it, and I noted that in my the second report that there was a tree-lined entrance from Montauk Highway that seems to be one of the main ways that they got into the property.
Yes, and that remained for quite a while, and you can see remnants of the tree line, even though the driveway is gone. You can see a remnant of the tree line in contemporary aerial images of the property there. This is just happens to be an image of the Best & Company store, probably about 1950s. This is the third location of the store in Manhattan, just north of St. Patrick's Cathedral. The prior place was 35th Street and 5th Avenue. And before that, Best & Company was located on West 23rd Street in Manhattan. So it moved uptown with the improvements in Manhattan. Ball was this is just Ball was very active in civic affairs in Manhattan. I won't go into everything, but he was chairman of the Fifth Avenue Association for many years, and influential in its political life and governmental life in Manhattan, which was an irony because Ball, Ansel Ball, claimed to be a permanent resident of Watermill. And he was caught at that after, along with a whole bunch of other rich people who claimed to be full-time residents of their summer cottages in order to avoid New York City income taxes. And he did not vote in New York City. He didn't vote, as far as I know, probably out here either. But he was very careful trying to maintain the image of his residency. And the kind of hide from the tax authorities actually came back to bite the Ball family when Thomas R. Ball, who was the head of Best and Company, just before he died, he put in an envelope half the shares in Best and Company in two envelopes and gave it to an assistant. And he said, when I die, these are to go to my two sons. One son was Ansel and the other son was Thomas Arthur Ball. And so he did that in 1907, was put in a safe. 1911, he dies. His estate goes to probate in Suffolk County, and the surrogate in Suffolk County evaluates the value of the estate and, among other things, how much the goodwill of Best and Company was worth as a price to be assessed for taxes, and among other things. And the original evaluation was something in the 200 and some odd thousand, and the surrogate court's decision was, oh, it's only going to be 90,000, saving him a bunch of money. There was an appeal to the appellate division of the court, and in it comes out the whole story of Ball trying to avoid having his estate taxed under New York state law by kind of handing over the value of the shares underneath the table secretly. And the court eventually reversed it, and so they wound up paying substantially more in the estate taxes that were there. Somewhat of a colorful element to the family in terms of its place, but the big probably note of interest, I think, for the Ball family is the fact that Best and Company was a major retail enterprise in New York history, both metropolitan. After, I think, Ansel Ball died 1920 something, whatever, the store began to expand. And eventually the store had 20 stores in the East Coast, over 1,200 employees, and eventually was brought out in late 1960s by McCrory Company, another retailer, and eventually McCrory's put the Best brand to sleep and closed all the stores as well. I can remember the Best and Company stores on Long Island, Garden City, and Manhasset back in the 1960s during the period that they had expanded. But there was a notable economic enterprise in New York State. So the Ball family's connection is certainly notable for that as well. There probably are other things we don't know about them, but in the few days we had to compile information, we've gotten that far. And Susan has done a wonderful job putting a lot of pieces together in a very short time, and putting aside some of the other things for the Landmarks Board in order to try and get things ready for this meeting.
The one thing I'll just mention, when Mrs. Ball died, and I think it was around 1940, 41, the property went out for auction because nobody wanted to buy. That's the one at 326 Cobb. Nobody wanted to buy that large a piece of property. So it was subdivided into 5 pieces. And there's a list of who bought one. Albert McConnell actually bought one of the properties. And coincidentally, the real estate broker for Mrs. Ball was James V. Osborne. So I guess
James V. Osborne, I believe, was the James Osborne of the travel agency and John Osborne's son.
Right. So and I think he also was associated probably with the railroad, but we won't. It was just from when I did the railroad research for the map. But anyways, so that's when it was subdivided, and that's pretty major because it's just recently that those properties have been put together as one. They were separated from 1950 until the 2010, 15s maybe. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So we know basically the storylines associated with this property. There are obviously details and other things that might possibly be filled in. But the consideration we have is how should we respond to this application. The applicant has an obligation to remove all structures prior to closing the purchase or the sale to the Community Preservation Fund, which is the interest that Southampton Town has in this application. And the kind of response we give probably might have an effect, might not have an effect. I don't know. And I'd like to hear from board members if you have. Well, first of all, let me first ask. We have some guests here who may want to have some comment to make before we open it up for our business discussion here. Bob, did you want to add anything to what we said?
No, I'm fine. We just don't want this whole process to be held up. It's been going on long enough at this point, and it needs to be resolved.
Okay, thanks for that. And by the way, thanks for all the cooperation you gave to the board members in looking at the property.
Very welcome.
Do we have any other people who want to add any comment before we figure out how we will respond? And if not, well, board members, do you want to voice your views on how we should respond? Well, I would suggest that in the absence of somebody,
Vicky, you're muted.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, I certainly, Susan, you did an outstanding job in such a short period of time. That was a lot of history to cover. And it's what you did uncover and discover was a property that has a very rich history in terms of the residents and its importance to the community, as well as all the very, very interesting architectural features. I mean, I toured the house with you, and I thought it was a beautiful property. So many lovely elements. To me, it would be just a shame to demolish this property. And I know that the intent is to have this, the land used as a park, and certainly that would be a beautiful entrance into Watermill. I agree with that. It is a large property. Perhaps one solution could be in the budget that the town would need to put together to actually create the park, because there would be quite a bit of work to do. In addition to the demo of the buildings, would be to incorporate this property and make it preserve it. It could be used for public restrooms or public offices. I think it would be just a terrible shame and sort of to thumb our nose at an awful lot of history. That's all I have.
Martha, you were there at the site?
Thank you, Ed. Yes, I viewed the property with you all, and I noticed on the drawing, the proposed drawing, how two things. One, there seems to be very little room for parking on what they're proposing to put in as the park, but I know that's not our issue. But I would thought if they actually want this to be used as a park, the building would be a great attraction to it. Otherwise, it's just a piece of property. But if the parking is around the size that it says, you maybe could get 50 people stopping there, and it'd be a lovely picnic site with the house. I'm sure there isn't a budget for it because the parks can't maintain buildings, as I understand. They're two totally separate entities. But there's so much original in it. I think it's a lovely entrance, and you're going to be able to see it better with the park. So I'm with Vicky. There's really a lot to throw away there, and it'd be a terrible shame. The other two buildings, they could go, but I'd certainly be in favor of keeping that one. And I think it would attract more people to the space.
I noticed that I know that we've had very little time to absorb everything, but just in terms of framing the discussion of options, how many of you, my fellow board members, would consider this might qualify as a landmark? Okay, very interesting. Thank you. That I think sets a kind of threshold for significance that we can report back in our response on this matter, and that I think would help. I thought there are a couple of options that are there for our response. One, we can do our traditional response of a form with objection or a form with no objection checked off, depending upon our views. The other would be a form with the boxes checked, no objection with comments, or objection with comments. And then a fifth might be just responding with a page of commentary and description as to what we thought was of interest and significance in preserving it, and whether perhaps, as we've been getting into alternative solutions of late, perhaps the town and the applicants might think of an alternative prospect to the arrangements that they have. And that could be, in effect, our recommendation back to both the town and the applicant. How does...
it's just, I'm not sure that there are options, and it's just, if there's some way it could be preserved, and I know there'd be we use it like adaptive reuse on the property, not that location, but there is another lot that's farther away and maybe not as much in view of the water. I mean, leaving it in place would be the first, of course, be the best solution, but someplace on the property. I mean, if worse came to worse, and I'll go, well, I mean, if it could be relocated or donated, and this is going way down the material salvage, but I don't even want to think about those things being in the dumpster, So if there's some way we could back up and find some adaptive reuse for it, particularly on the property. That would be.
Well, there is in the ordinary scheme of things, the Community Preservation Fund is usually not interested in taking care of structures and buildings. And in fact, their interpretation of the law that they use is that it's not possible on their part to do that. That the only way that they may do something like that is if, in fact, the property is protected under state law, which in our case usually means whether or not it receives a landmark designation that would then possibly empower the CPF to think about what they might want to do with the structure that's there. So that was one of the background thoughts when I asked for a little poll of whether you thought it was a landmark possibility.
And I'll just, I should have prefaced on this. I really can't argue that it would make a beautiful park, and it would be a welcoming way into, and all the things that were mentioned in the article, into Watermill. I mean, it's just a lovely to be there and to see, and it's not Mill Pond, but in Mill Creek, but it's pretty large. You can see the windmill, barely see it down to the right. It's not that, it's right on the other side to the right. And it would be lovely, but it just seems a shame that the homeowners are put in a position that they have to make a choice if they want to sell it to CPF. It seems like I don't fault them. I just fault the process that forces somebody to and puts us in this position.
So, any other thoughts that might be added here?
I mean, this property would be so beautiful as the centerpiece of the park. I mean, we have how many parks that have beautiful windmills, and people associate, oh, yes, let's go to the windmill. Well, why wouldn't you want to come to this beautiful historic home that has so, sorry?
It would attract people. I totally agree with you. It'd be a lovely place to sit and have a small gathering. It really would be. Sorry, Vicki, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, how about then I draft a letter of response that is directed both to the application, which will go back to the building department, and to the town with respect to this property, indicating that for good reasons we find it worthy of preservation, that an informal, non-binding poll found it to be a landmark quality, that the building, as we said, has potential, as Martha just said, value as an attraction to a future park because of its appearance and place, and see what comes of that in terms of the town's interest and their interaction with the applicant. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yes.
And even of interest is that round basement that they only see west of the canal usually. I found that so fascinating that it was just, it's like a little museum.
Yes, it has some interesting characteristics. Of course, that would not necessarily be seen by normal people, but other parts of the building would, if it were preserved. So if there's nothing else on this, I will draft a memorandum and circulate it around, and perhaps with some thoughts you might have some other suggestions or thoughts that you can respond that could be incorporated into it. And that'll take a couple days or so to resolve that. But there being no other, I think, concern here.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
What is the timeline on me getting this history updated? You need it at the same time as the response? Most likely.
No, I don't think. I think the history you can work on perfecting the history and smoothing it out for all the parts that need to.
It's a project once you switch from 1902 on. That's where I was on Sunday, so
Yeah.
we'll work on that.
So yeah, that won't be necessary to immediately attach to the report. We'll provide enough description just in the response memorandum that will document our concern. So, is that okay with everyone?
And thank you, Ed, for providing that, even though it was this morning. I'm glad you did. So we knew. I would much rather have it be accurate than have it be done. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad it turned out in time. So.
Can I just ask, Julie, do you think there's any significance to the house?
What was that?
I was just asking Julie if she thought historically if there was a reason to keep the house.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, absolutely. It's a historical, it's definitely a historical house. It definitely has historical integrity. The way that the CPF was working on purchasing this property might be the problem. So Lisa not being here, she's away this week. I'd like to talk to her when she's back, and we can see. And I understand your objections for sure.
Okay.
Anything further on this agenda? If not, I think
one other thing, is it possible to get a copy of that report emailed to me?
Yes, very definitely. I think when Susan gets it done, it'll be emailed.
Thank you.
And when we get our response done, we'll email that copy to you as well, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Did I cover your family adequately? If not, feel free to let me know at some point and I can correct it. Whatever I spoke to you, I want to make sure particularly that your family history is correct. So thank you.
Okay, in the absence of any other business, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
Ed.
Right.
Thank you.
And good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Bob. We appreciate it. Thank you.